Welcome back. Today we're taking a seriously fascinating journey from the device sitting right there in your pocket all the way to the invisible battlefield of global cyber warfare. We so often think of cybersecurity as this purely technical problem. Firewalls, complex code, impenetrable software, all that stuff. But the reality? It's far more intricate and actually much closer to home. In this explainer, we're going to track the evolution of a cyber attack, moving from simple human errors and phone exploits straight up to highly sophisticated nation-state threats. All right, let's get started. Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our roadmap. First, we'll cover the human vulnerability. Then, hijacking your mobile identity, man-in-the-middle attacks, the zero-day blind spot, nation-state hackers and ransomware, and finally, defending your digital life. Section 1. The human vulnerability. So, to really understand modern hacking, we actually have to start with human psychology, because the easiest way into any device or network is rarely a million-dollar software flaw. Usually, it's just the person holding the device. And this isn't exactly a new concept. Take the 1980s hacker Kevin Poulsen. He went by Dark Dante. He didn't use some advanced malware for his most famous stunt. Instead, he just hijacked the phone lines of a Los Angeles radio station to guarantee that he would be the 102nd caller. And why? All to win a Porsche. It just goes to show that long before smartphones were a thing, hacking was really about manipulating simple, human-managed systems. But today, that kind of manipulation has been completely weaponized into what's called open source intelligence, or OSINT. A penetration tester from Rapid7 actually outlined the modern playbook for us, and it's wild. Before writing a single line of code, an attacker scours Facebook and LinkedIn to just map out the target's life. Then they cross-reference that with dark web breach data. Finally, they literally just call tech support, armed with enough personal info to effortlessly impersonate their target. Section 2. Hijacking your mobile identity. And that brings us to how these social engineering tactics are weaponized specifically against the devices we rely on the most, our smartphones. This is where we run into SIM swapping. As defined by SentinelOne, this is a technique where an attacker uses those exact social engineering tricks we just talked about to convince your mobile carrier to transfer your phone number to a SIM card they control. The devastation here is massive because it completely bypasses SMS two-factor authentication. All those secure little codes your bank texts you, they go straight to the hacker. In the cryptocurrency world, this one single technique has led to irreversible, catastrophic financial losses. But, a SIM swap still requires an attacker to actively impersonate you. What if they don't even need to do that? What if attackers don't need your phone to read your messages at all? Section 3. Man in the middle. This brings us to a much more invisible threat, the man-in-the-middle attack, or MITM. This is where a hacker inserts themselves into the network, sitting completely unseen between you and your destination. And this brilliantly illustrates how it works, using the classic cryptographic model of Alice, Bob, and Mallory. When Alice sends a message to Bob, Mallory intercepts it. The absolutely crucial step is step 3. Mallory replaces Bob's encryption key with her own. So Alice thinks she's encrypting a message for Bob, but she's actually locking it for Mallory. Mallory then decrypts it, reads it, re-encrypts it with Bob's actual key, and passes it along. Bob gets the message totally unaware that a man in the middle just read every single word. And scary enough, this can happen right now on an unsecured Wi-Fi network if an attacker is nearby. Section 4. The zero-day blind spot. All right, so we've looked at human error and network eavesdropping. Now let's graduate to the advanced software vulnerabilities used by global enterprises and intelligence agencies. Now, what's really interesting about this next concept based on data from Vectra AI is that it highlights a terrifying distinction for cybersecurity professionals. A zero-day vulnerability is the ultimate defender's nightmare. It's a flaw completely unknown to the software vendor. There's no patch. Defenders have literally had 0 days of warning. Contrast that with an end day, where the vulnerability is known and a patch exists, but organizations just haven't gotten around to installing it yet. The danger here becomes glaringly obvious when we look at the whole vulnerability lifecycle. Attackers live in step 3, exploitation. According to threat intelligence reports, the average time it takes attackers to weaponize a vulnerability is just 5 days. Just 5 days. Yet for patch adoption, organizations take an average of 60 to 150 days to deploy those security updates. Hackers are moving at the speed of software. Corporations are moving at the speed of bureaucracy. The math heavily favors the attacker. Which is why this next number is so staggering. 90.
That is the number of zero-day vulnerabilities actively exploited in the wild in 2025 alone, according to Google's Threat Intelligence Group. And critically, 48% of these targeted enterprise technologies. We're talking about things like edge devices, routers, and security appliances, devices that traditional endpoint antivirus software simply cannot monitor.
Section 5. Nation-state hackers and ransomware.
So who exactly is finding and using these highly complex, incredibly expensive zero-day exploits? Well, this brings us to the absolute highest level of threat escalation, advanced persistent threats, or APTs. These are primarily state-sponsored hacking teams. A threat report from Hive Security perfectly encapsulates how these groups operate with this quote. Think of the difference between a pickpocket and a spy. The pickpocket wants your wallet and disappears. The spy wants to understand everything about you and stay invisible while doing it. These APTs aren't doing quick smash and grabs, right? They establish persistence inside compromised networks for months or even years. But sometimes the objective isn't espionage. Sometimes it's purely financial. $1.5 billion. Let that sink in. That is the amount of cryptocurrency stolen in a single afternoon in February 2026. The perpetrators, operating on behalf of the North Korean government, pulled this off using a compromised software update. It just goes to show how supply chain attacks can yield massive, massive returns. When we look at this data reported by Hive Security, we see different nations utilizing APTs for distinctly different geopolitical goals, and it's fascinating to break down. China's Volt Typhoon unit focuses on extreme stealth. They live off the land by using built-in Windows tools to hide within critical infrastructure. Meanwhile, Russia's APT-28 relies on targeted spear phishing to steal data, and Iranian groups frequently utilize detailed social engineering to gather regional intelligence. And when disruption is the goal, the physical world really suffers. 230,000. That is the number of Ukrainian homes that lost power in the winter of 2015. This was the direct result of a cyber attack by Russia's Sandworm unit. They deployed destructive wiper malware, which is software designed not to hold data for ransom, but to just permanently destroy it. Now, speaking of ransomware, criminal groups have absolutely learned from these nation-state actors. As outlined by Morphosec, modern ransomware is a highly sophisticated playbook now. Once they get in, they move laterally. They perform double extortion, meaning they steal your sensitive data to blackmail you with it before they encrypt your systems. But the most concerning part? Fileless techniques. Attackers are now executing malicious code directly in a computer's memory. Because literally no file is ever saved to the hard drive, traditional signature-based antivirus defenses are completely blind to the attack. They don't even know it's happening.
Section 6. Defending your digital life.
I know, all of this sounds super daunting, but understanding the threat is the very first step in countering it. So let's shift gears and look at actionable defense strategies. So the crucial point is this. We have got to move beyond outdated security. If you're still using SMS text messages for your two-factor authentication, you are wide open to the SIM swapping attacks we covered earlier. Security experts strongly recommend switching to authenticator apps that generate time-based one-time passwords or using physical hardware tokens. Because these are tied directly to your physical device, they are vastly harder for remote attackers to intercept. And at the enterprise level, the defense strategy basically has to assume that a breach will eventually happen. You absolutely need zero trust architecture, which essentially means trusting no device, even if it's already inside your network. You need rapid patch deployment to close those end-day vulnerabilities. But most importantly, to defend against 0 days and fileless malware, organizations must shift to behavioral threat detection. Instead of looking for a known malicious file, the network watches for weird behavior. Think about it like this. If an office printer suddenly tries to communicate with an overseas server at 3 a.m., the system flags it. Well, we've covered a massive spectrum in this explainer today, from a hacker's smooth-talking a tech support line all the way to nation-state actors shutting down entire power grids. The methods are constantly evolving, from your phone's SIM card to the firmware of giant enterprise routers. I want to leave you with this final thought as we wrap up. If advanced hackers are planting sleeper access today for conflicts years from now, is your network and your personal digital life prepared to detect the invisible? Thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive. Stay curious and definitely stay secure.